a place I'm from, everyone's a farmer, goes to church twice a week, that kind of thing.
But bad things kept happening. Mom tried to protect us with God. Pop tried to protect us with wrestling.
Shit.
No, it's good. Taught me to fight back.
I'm Devyn.
I'm Josh.
And this is the 14th appointment with your Medicinema.
Before we dive into the world of muscles and lifting, we have one piece of news to mention. Industry juggernaut Robert Corman died at the incredible age of 98 years old. To anyone like, admittedly, myself who isn't too familiar with B-movie history, please, Devyn, give us a bit of a refresher about his legacy.
So yeah, George Corman is the king of cult, as some people would like to call him. He has been, pretty much the biggest notable B film director for a long time and producer. I think probably more of a producer than he was a director. One thing he was known for was giving a lot of starts to a lot of directors, such as Francis Ford Coppola, Ron Howard, Joe Dante, James Cameron, Martin Scorsese. He was also known for giving a lot of actors their starts, such as Jack Nicholson, Dennis Hopper, and William Shatner. Some of those movies aren't even small movies. He wrote the original Little Shop of Horrors, very, very, very influential movie. We probably wouldn't have independent filmmaking in the same way that we do without Roger Corman. He really pioneered that idea, and he could have been a lot bigger, and he decided to stay in this independent space to continue to give people a launching point, which was really fantastic. And no one's really done that since, maybe barring Lloyd Kaufman of Tromaville, which is also a very B horror, B sci-fi type of thing.
Yeah, it's kind of incredible that his name doesn't have nearly the notoriety that all of these names you just listed do have, and we might not have any of those if it wasn't for Corman himself.
Yeah, I mean, I think some people know him. He also acted sometimes. He's in The Godfather 2. He's in Silence of the Lambs, Philadelphia, The Manchurian Candidate, Apollo 13. His brother was a big actor, Gene Corman. He was in a lot of things. It's a certain side of cinema, for sure, that not everybody is immediately aware of. But yeah, he was a big part of it for a long time.
But yeah, it's incredible that even if you aren't aware of his work, of his direct work, then you're still absolutely aware of his influence.
You didn't like it, it looks like, but one of his first movies that he ever wrote and directed was the original Fast and the Furious, which I don't think you enjoyed, actually,
No,
which is
totally good movie.
which is totally fair. It was a jump off point, I think, for him as well.
That movie has nothing to do with the Fast and the Furious franchise other than the name. They really wanted the name, and they found out that there was this B movie that already existed with that name, so they bought the name rights. But that's the only connection of these.
Also, if you want to bring up names of movies or names of things that he kind of brought that became famous for a different thing later, his second movie that was really big was a biopic starring Charles Bronson, Machine Gun Kelly. So that was, obviously turned into its own thing later in life, didn't it?
That's funny.
He died just what would be my today, your this morning, last night while you were sleeping. So yeah, the world mourns his loss in the coming weeks for sure. From this historical juggernaut of a man, we now move on to other big historical men in the film Iron Claw.
The Iron Claw follows the real-life story of the wrestling dynasty that was the Von Erich family. Under the tight grip of Father Fritz Von Erich, all 4 boys of his have to join the wrestling industry one by one, with ever-growing pressure put on them to bring home the World Heavyweight Championship belt that the father never won. drama and the supposed Von Erich curse slowly unfold as the first brother dies due to unattended medical problems. The second, after awakening from a coma, kills himself, just like the third brother, who can't stand the pressure of the industry and his father anymore. Devyn, what's your relationship to wrestling?
Oh man, so pretty tangential. It was around. I think it's hard to be an American kid in the 90s and 2000s and not have it kind of be everywhere. The town I lived in would have like the WWE and back then, you know, it was, WCW, NCW, or whatever it was called. You know, all those things would come through. It's an Americana thing to begin with, so it's just part of the culture to a degree. I would always have like friends or cousins who were really into wrestling, and they'd know all the names, they'd know all the characters. It's there in my life, but I've never been into it.
I had like a phase of like 1 year, I think, in middle school where I kind of fell into it. I had a few friends who were really into it. Not like that anything like this happens here, where we were just watching, recordings that came over from America, but from afar, there were quite some hardcore fans here as well. But yeah, I was absolutely not familiar with the story of the Von Erichs before this.
Yeah, I had heard of the cursed wrestling family before, but I didn't. I mean, that's yeah. I mean, it's a thing. It for sure is a thing. Ric Flair fought all of them but one. Actually, he is part of the era of wrestling that I know, and so I'm aware of them as far as being the cursed family. But I didn't know anything about them really, until I'd seen this and done my own research about it and stuff. I would love to immediately bring up the elephant not in the room.
Mm-hmm.
I have a hard time with true story films based on a true story movie, biopics sometimes, that I don't care for an unreliable biopic. It's not my thing. It always bothers me when they change things for what is sometimes really frivolous reasons, or just reasons that aren't something I would agree with. And this movie does this pretty strongly. And when I say the elephant not in the room, I am referring to Chris Von Erich, who is the final wrestling brother.
I guess the sixth, apparently.
Yeah, well, yeah.
If you counted the little boy.
Yes. Who, was a really big part of that. He was a huge part of it. He existed. He just doesn't exist in this film. Furthermore, they actually mix a lot of the things that happened to him in with one of the other characters in the movie, and they just kind of combine them into one person, which is incredibly reductionist to me. I think it's kind of ugly, to be really honest. And when asked about it, the directors and producers were just like, yeah, it would have been a really heavy story to have another suicide in the movie, because he also killed himself. So it's just kind of like, what the fuck? That's my first how I feel about this movie, and it's going to kind of be a lot of my basis of my feelings about this movie, to be honest.
That's interesting. I am aware that brother was cut, and to me, it's a great example of how to do adapting from a real life story well. Like, to me, that's a good point of that adaptation process here, actually. I do fully agree with them that by making the story a little less extreme, by taking away details from it and taking away from the curse, or whatever you want to call it, from this tragic story, it makes it more cohesive of a story to tell. It makes it less
it's not as dour, it's not as down, it's not as like draggy.
I'm not even about that, but having like another suicide in there would have, in an odd way, almost taken out some of the punch. It's like, oh, we're doing this again. From just a pure storytelling perspective, it would have been a lot of repeating things we already talked about. Usually, these problems of adapting a real life story and then not being accurate to history, I have a problem with, because they add stuff to it, because they change the reality in a way to make it more extreme, to make it more fitting to whatever means necessary.
Mm-hmm.
Here it's really the opposite. The story is just so extreme that it almost, in my opinion, wouldn't have fit into a movie, and they had to reduce it. They had to take some opponents out, and bringing up that some of the missing brothers' life's elements still occur in this movie is kind of the perfect takeaway, in my opinion, to still include the messaging, to still include the haunting side of things, but have it be a cohesive story at the same time. To me, it's well adapted.
So you're not wrong, right? You're not wrong. In the same way, I often bring this up as an example of my feelings about these kind of things, is The Blind Side. The movie The Blind Side is very much the same way that they changed the story, they adapted the story to make a better story. And it was a better story, and it sold as a better story. That movie ruined that man's life because it was a better story than his actual story. It's reckless. So what if it makes a better story? That was a dude. That was a real human being, and we're just going to completely ignore him. Sometimes I think telling the truth is better than abolishing it to make it a better story. Yeah, it does make it a better story to bring it down. It would have been repetitive to have another suicide in it or whatever, right? But that's what happened, man.
Mm-hmm.
That's what fucking happened. Here's the thing, is this movie opens with the words, based on a true story.
Yeah.
But it's not, because you've changed it. You've literally eliminated an entire family member. This is inspired by a true story, at best. And that's what it should say. I know it's pedantic, but it's almost always how I feel with biopics. Some of them really do, take a lot more, you said, liberties to add things and stuff like that. And where that's a problem in its own right, I think when you have a story like this where the characters, their deaths and stuff are so impactful to the family and stuff, it seems crazy to remove an entire one. But that's just me on the beginning of it, I have other problems with this actual film that go outside of that.
It's interesting to have you be the hater for once, and I can sit over here defend a bit. Just a brief note on more like the real life side of things. Kevin, the one Van Eric that's involved in this story and still alive, has been interviewed about this movie. Like, the family wasn't involved in the writing process, and I think you can feel that there was not really a lot of tampering from, there's examples like the Ice Cube Straight Outta Compton, the movie where Ice Cube was one of the executive producers, and you can feel that in the movie because Ice Cube as a character in the movie is just the one dude who never does anything wrong, who's always right, who's always the good guy. There's nothing like that here. They basically said, we trust you, do as you think is right from a storytelling side of things. And the only real complaint Kevin had about this was that, in his opinion, the portrayal of the father is too harsh. That he doesn't believe that he was such a bad guy and that he thinks he was a great father.
Mm-hmm.
If Kevin, as a producer, would have been involved, he might have tampered with that, because from his very subjective point of view, having these, Rosen shades on, he probably can't even judge how awful of a father he was, and he still apparently defends him to this day. So he mentioned that there was another brother, but that wasn't like a major complaint for him.
Yeah.
It helped me not have a problem with that change, I guess.
I mean, that's fair. I would say that the fact that he's skewed that his father was a good guy shows that his opinion don't mean jack shit. No, I'm just joking. No, it is funny though. It is funny that his father was a heel. Do you know what that is?
No.
So in wrestling, you have you have the hero and you have the heel. So the hero character, the heel is the bad guy, right? His father was a heel. His father was the bad guy in wrestling, specifically a Nazi.
Yeah.
And that's
why
the Von Erich. Yeah.
the German name that is not pronounced, like that's not how you pronounce that name, just to, to give everyone the clarification.
How would it be pronounced properly?
Van Erich would be the correct pronunciation in German of that name.
Is that a real German name if it was like that, or is that just still made up?
No, that could be a real name for sure.
Okay. But yeah, so it's kind of funny that from what might be Kevin's perspective, his dad is still the heel in this movie.
I have one note on a more general side of things that we can get into before we go into the movie itself. I absolutely love the decision on the name. The Iron Claw as an imagery already kind of, it's really a symbol for this family as a whole. It's their signature move. But on a metaphor side, it's really the way the father treats the family. He has a tight grip over everyone. He has this pressure held over them and kind of pushes them and forms them in his hands, the way he wants them to be. And that's really what the Iron Claw represents as a whole. So to me, the naming of, choosing that symbol as the name to represent the whole family is amazing.
That's really funny because I didn't think of it as the father. I thought of it more of as the industry of wrestling. But yeah, like the way that the entire industry has taken a hold of their whole family, the way it takes a hold of so many people. It's like a grip. Once you're in that business, it becomes like a generational thing. So many wrestlers come from wrestling families. It's very often a passed down thing. This isn't abnormal to have they face off like another wrestling family, I think, at one point. I forget the name of that team, but that's because it's not uncommon. That was a real thing. Do you like that about it too? Yeah, my first note's kind of just on the dad. The dad being terrible, being an absolute fucking horrible human being, ranking his children and stuff like right to their faces and just And then I was like, it's so funny. I was thinking like, oh, well, at least the mom's going to come through on this. And then you see the mom a little later and she's just absolutely emotionally absent from their lives and stuff. And she's just like, also kind of not a great person. She's like, Mom, I need to talk to you. That's what your brothers are for. It's just terrible. It's funny that he didn't say that his mom was too harsh though.
Ooh, didn't realize that yet. The ranking scene is already super telling from the moment one. It reveals how the father thinks of the family, that he thinks of the family in the exact same way he would think of wrestling, with rankings and with love to be earned, not to be given. Super telling little moment there.
So, okay, that's the other thing that I'm not going to pretend to fully understand. But a lot of this movie, is about... it's very much like the Dragon Ball Z arc of like, who I want to be the strongest in the world. It's weird. They kind of tackle it in the movie a little bit and they explain like it's about being the best performer. It's about being the most loved and stuff, right? But it's so weird to like follow this struggle of staged performances and like pre-chosen winning and losing just based on like popularity. I don't know. It's all very bizarre.
The dialogue he has, I think it's like on the first date the two have.
Yes.
About it all being arranged and how a champion is chosen. To me, that kind of was eye-opening. To me, that made sense that, obviously it wouldn't be given to someone who doesn't put in the effort. Obviously, it wouldn't be given to someone who doesn't know how to entertain. Like, these are all skills and, mindsets that these people have to adhere to. And it makes sense that at the end of the day, in a kind of promotion-esque manner, the person who put in the most effort would rise to the top. It kind of perfectly shows why the system, why this is so popular in America. It's the American dream just like laid out for you. Work hard and you'll get rewarded by the end of things, You can rise to the top. Just how do they say? Pull up your bootstraps or whatever.
It's still like a popularity contest, which is the weirdest part of it. Like, you can still be like the hardest working dude in the business, and what if people just don't like you, so you're a heel, you're just like a really well used heel.
Yeah, even in that, it's a kind of great metaphor for the American dream, because the American dream, as it's like said to, just work hard, it's not just that, there are other factors playing into it, but that's kind of the lie people tell to themselves, that, I just need to work harder and everything will be resolved.
That's super accurate, that you could work hard all your life in America, still kind of get somewhere and not be anything.
Yeah.
So no, absolutely. It makes sense. And I don't think they were often heels, but I think, if I'm not mistaken, that Kevin and Carrie were both played heels for a good while in wrestling too.
Okay.
Like their dad. I was trying to figure that out. I was like, how do you go from your father being the Nazi character to you adapting his moves and just carrying his torch, but also still not being a Nazi character?
Yeah, the law is a bit fuzzy.
Yeah, it's kind of interesting there. Seeing Ric Flair stuff in this movie was really weird, because the Ric Flair I grew up with is this like really old guy. He's still he's obviously older now. He's 73 now, or 76 or 78, and he just had his last wrestling match at 73.
Really?
Which is, it's fucking crazy. But it's just bizarre, the entire world of wrestling, and these stories of wrestling families there was another one too, wasn't there a one recently? It's like about that girl that like gets to be accepted to be a wrestler.
I can just recall Peanut Butter Falcon as like a more recent one, and before that, The Wrestler by Darren Aronofsky.
Wrestling with My Family.
Never heard of it.
Came out in 2019. Yeah. Before we get more scene to scene, let's get into my next thing. This movie is trying to be a serious story, right? We can agree with that?
Sure, yeah.
It's trying to tell a somber tale. It wants that story taken seriously. It wants you to engage with these people, right? As if they're real humans.
Yeah.
This movie has gratuitous. I don't know the word you should use for it. It's not male nudity, obviously. It's just, man, they'd look for any chance they get to put these guys without their shirts on. Any fucking chance they get. Oh my God. Today, actually, me and you had a conversation about Murder on the Orient Express, and how you mentioned that a lot of the shots were superfluous. They didn't really need to be there. They didn't add anything to the story. They just existed.
Yeah.
There's a scene where the dad comes out to tell Carrie that he would like him to join the wrestling team. And all of the brothers are outside, completely shirtless, sweating their asses off, glistening, and they're digging hole thing. They're digging like a hole, or holes. They're just digging. The digging is never explained. It literally adds nothing to the existence of the film, except for this was a reason to make them sweaty and shirtless.
That's so funny.
And this happens multiple times throughout the movie. There are many scenes where it's just like, there's literally no reason for him to be shirtless right now and sweaty. He's just like, he was just previously working out 5 minutes ago. Okay, cool. Like, it's just gratuitously sexy the entire time, and it doesn't add anything to the movie, which is fine. I am okay with sexy films, but when you're trying to tell a serious film about this, like, multiple suicides in a family and like this tumultuous rough time, it seems really weird to be like, but you know what? They had rockin' abs. It just seems weird on top of it, I guess.
Okay. I have my thoughts to that. Growing up on the countryside in a literal farmer's village, I can't tell you how often I have seen grown men just doing some work in the garden without the top on. Like, my dad would run around like that all the time. He just isn't as buff. Like, that's a very real countryside. I'm gonna do some work outside now, and I'm the man, so I'm pulling my shirt off for no reason other than, I guess, he's a little bit hot. So that's just like, I took that as a completely a normal world building countryside thing. And to me, it shows kind of this paradox of wrestling where it's portrayed, or it's like generally seen as this hyper masculine sport. I don't want to even Google the percentage of male fans of wrestling. It's a very masculine thing. But behind the scenes, it's all arranged. These are actors. These are like choreographies that they are learning like dancers. There's a scene later on where we see them before a fight, and you see Zac Efron, this monster of a machine of a man. It's insane how much he trained for this. Just like shave his leg with a teeny tiny razor. It's such a great contrast to the image they portray, and such a feminine moment, that to me those scenes where they are actually like farmer's boy style, just doing some work on the farm, and actually portraying that masculine image, it to me that's almost necessary for later contrasting image like the shaving the leg scene to really pay off.
Okay. I get why it exists in the film. I just all right.
you don't have to accept my analysis. You can still hate it.
I'm looking at some of the marketing for the movie, and there is a 1.5-minute long ad of just the three brothers sitting on bales of hay, eating ribs, staring into the camera, wiping barbecue sauce on their chests, and winking at the camera. And there's another one where they're just putting on gloves, and they're like at a horse corral, and they're all wearing leather jackets for some reason. Yeah. Okay.
Yeah, I'm not even denying that there is probably a certain side of this that is a pure marketing factor of, maybe we can, I don't know, get some thirsty girls into the core audience as well, and not just wrestling fans. Or like thirsty gay boys, who knows? But
I have many a gay friend in my life who came to many realizations while being a young boy watching wrestling.
I can see that, yeah.
Honestly, I would not doubt if that's part of the push.
Yeah.
With nothing wrong with that. Nothing wrong with that. Again, it just seems like a weird story to choose for it. with the how serious this story is.
I can see that, yeah.
Some other little things about this movie, I guess, that are just about the general movie is this is Zac Efron's first film since his facial reconstruction, which lends to why he looks so different in this movie than he does from everything else he's ever been in. He had just had a chin reconstruction from an accident he had.
I was aware that he had some plastic surgery done in his face. I was not aware what's the cause. What was the accident? Did you look into this?
My wife says that he's lying and that he absolutely probably just got a botched surgery in like some fucking island somewhere. But he says that he was running through his house in socks, slipped, and bashed his chin on the corner of a granite fountain, woke up, and his chin was hanging off his face.
Oh my fucking God. Well, but since your wife is the expert here, that's...
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. Gotta follow what she says.
I wrote down the lines that the father says when getting Carrie to join the wrestling family.
Okay, yeah.
I wouldn't wish upon wrestling on any of you, for I only wrestled to provide for you all and always hoped you'd choose another profession. The boys know that this is bullshit in this moment.
100%.
There's this beautiful way they stage this, where the father walks away after that interaction, and for quite a while, nobody speaks a word. It's complete silence until the father is out of hearing range. They don't even address the lie or anything, they just start celebrating afterwards, but it's almost this tense moment of, we all know what has just been said is a complete lie, but we can't really address it. in any way whatsoever. So we need a moment to let it happen, let it play out, and let it move past before we just celebrate the circumstances as they are.
Damn, I absolutely was like, I was like, man, that dad talked for 12 seconds, but we're going to watch these dudes be half naked for another 45. I was like, they're really milking this nipple scene.
Oh my god.
I didn't even pick up on like any emotional like moment of them like, I was just like, wow, they're really milking this, aren't they? That's so funny.
Oh, that's amazing. The different takeaways one can have.
Yeah.
Maybe you are just obsessed with the nipples, Devyn. Have you thought about that?
I mean that's totally it could be a thing. I think the moment of the movie that made me kind of like flip my view on that and just start seeing how silly it was is the football scene that we watched them play fucking football for like a whole like 2 or 3 minutes or something.
Mm-hmm.
Oh my god, I hated that scene so much. It's just terrible music to like my least favorite sport in the world. We're just watching them run and be muscular boys, and that's cool. But I wasn't into it.
To me, it was
showing the bonding of the brothers.
Yeah, it's very much a bonding moment, and it showed like at least one, like it's basically the one moment where you can see them connecting to the father somehow. It's the one moment where they actually are together and are enjoying themselves as a family,
That's fair.
That was kind of my takeaway. And yeah, American football, like I have no relation to it whatsoever. My only relation to it is due to movies and where it's usually the bonding moment for a family. So
it is also often seen as often homoerotic football.
Oh yeah. Yeah. To continue on the like scene I just mentioned with the moment of silence where no one addresses the lie.
Yes.
Or no one addresses the problem in more bigger sense. There's a scene a few minutes later that perfectly fits with that. The scene is between David and Kevin sitting in a toilet stall after David had just puked blood and shortly before he's supposed to go to Japan to win them over in preparation for getting his chance at the World Heavyweight Championship. Kevin, in that moment, is serious for a moment and says, rightfully so, that David is pushing himself too hard and he shouldn't go to Japan. A truth that we and both of them understand, but usually wouldn't have been spoken. Because the truth and the reality afterwards is that they can't do anything about it. The only thing resulting from that is that they have to laugh it off. There just isn't any way to follow up on these words of not going there because he will for sure go there because that's what the father said so. To me, that's a perfect sister scene, I guess, to the earlier one where they just didn't address it because it also wasn't as high stakes, I guess. It wasn't like, oh, I'm afraid you're gonna die. It's more like, oh, you just lost your profession and you're doing this now, I guess. But yeah, it shows how like these are the two paths. Either they don't address it and move on with their life, or they address it and can't really do anything about it either way.
They bring that up earlier too. It's kind of like they've learned their lesson by that point because they bring it up earlier too when the dad, when Kevin is trying to tell the mom that his dad's pushing too hard, and that's when she's like, "That's between them" or whatever. So it's a thing they're aware of.
For sure, Kevin is trying to at points address it directly to the person, to the mother, but always running into dead ends. Later on, he even tries to talk to the father. Before Carrie kills himself, he calls up the father specifically and tries to, as a last stance, as a last way to do something about this, tries to go to the source and tries to actually address the father. But it's not only too late, but it's not really, the father won't listen.
Mm-hmm. Kevin definitely has the older brother syndrome, as they call it.
Second older brother syndrome.
Yeah, second older brother syndrome. That's right.
As we learned.
Something I did enjoy about this movie was I really liked the graphics that go up when fights begin.
Okay.
I know that's really dumb. I know it's really small, but that's what the film feels good when it does that. It feels like you're watching old wrestling and stuff, and it portrays that really well. And it's a big part of the movie. Wrestling is obviously a huge part of this film. So I really enjoyed the attention to that detail.
Yeah, they also in an interview talked about how they kind of created the perfect environment for this all to feel real.
Mm-hmm.
Like this is a kind of extension of this, because as an example, there's the scene where they have the 3 people tag team fight, whatever it's called. In one sweeping camera movement, they are supposed to slide into the boxing ring, into, under the ropes and into the thing, which is something they never trained or prepared for. But they said they pulled it off in like 2 takes, and I think they even used the first take, because walking into that arena, having the music blasting, and having actually 300 extras there all screaming at them, it just perfectly created this environment of adrenaline and, testosterone in the air that, it just pumped them up to the degree where they just did it for real, and it felt natural.
That's kind of cool.
I have a few more things left. I really like the relationship between Kevin and his... What she calls the girlfriend of Kevin.
Oh, I don't remember. I think it is Pam, yeah.
I really like the dynamic between Kevin and Pam. The way she kind of has to force the relationship upon him almost. She has to lay out how he should ask her to a date and stuff like that. Because it kind of shows how the father educated them, or the lack of teaching them things, and how Kevin as a person to this point has just never taken the initiative, probably with anything. He is always just the kid who says, what am I supposed to do? Okay, I'm doing that. I'm gonna do that for you. And yeah, it's perfectly reflected in her telling him to ask her out. That was great.
That's one scene, I guess, that I did take a little bit deeper in a different way, is that I saw it as the mom and the dad. There's a scene later where they're like, oh, all the kids are out of the house or whatever, right? So they clearly have a relationship. They got some kids, they're getting at things done, but they don't seem to make that very apparent as a family. They don't communicate very well, the mom and the dad. They don't work together at all in any way on anything. Like the mom said, like, that's your dad's job. That's between you and your dad. I'm not in on that, blah, blah, blah. So I kind of took it as like maybe Kevin has never seen like his parents interact in such a way, so he doesn't even know how to behave romantically.
Yeah, what romance really implies.
Yeah, like that's how like money driven or like experience driven his parents are. That it's not even like a part of his reality.
Mm-hmm.
I would say they all had really big careers in Japan as well. I don't know, they don't really cover that in the movie. I was like, why the fuck? I was like, why did he die in Japan of all places? No, but actually I kind of had an idea. So like, Japan is a huge wrestling circuit as well. That's probably the other biggest place in the world that wrestling in the way that it does in America exists. Luchadors of Mexico come really close, but they have their own really specific identity and culture that doesn't really flow into Japanese and American wrestling the same. But yeah, Japanese wrestling is huge. I think they started women's wrestling. I think they were the first ones to do women's wrestling, but I could be wrong.
Awesome. Yeah, I wrote down one moment at the press conference with Mike after his coma, when the journalist asks, when are you gonna be back? The camera cuts to a perspective shot of, we look past Mike, who's out of focus in the foreground as he speaks the words, but what we look at who is in focus, center frame, is the father. Not because the father like reacts in any major way or does like anything particular in that moment, but to me it really meant that we see him because the answer Mike says isn't his, but the answer by his father spoken through him. It's just like the Mike has no drive to win any belt at all, and it's just the drive insisted upon him by the father. And yeah, that was just a great way to show that.
The question isn't even really aimed at Mike; it's really aimed at his dad, and that's why, we're focusing on the dad.
Great little moment. Yeah, I guess my final note is a thing that I also liked about this movie. I will be reconnected with my brothers on the other side is an actual quote by Carrie Van Eyck that ended up inspiring the heaven sequence that we get to see after his suicide, with including the little 6-year-old Van Eyck oldest brother.
Oh my god.
You hated that?
Oh my god.
Let me put it first why I like that a lot. To me, that perfectly fit in because whilst the movie tries to show the actual logic and stuff like that behind the wrestling circus and the actual work, and whilst it is very serious about this is hard work, this isn't just like all fake, quote unquote, this is actually dangerous, these are actual stunts, they work hard to get to this point, there is still this undeniable fantasy side to it all, this undeniable arrangement and, all of the magical side, if you want to put it that way, of wrestling still exists. And so to me, having this movie that for the most part plays out super seriously, but has this small magical fantasy element to it as well, perfectly reflects the nature or the way this movie looks at wrestling as a whole.
That's a really beautiful analogy, honestly.
Well, thank you.
Not analogy, but way to look at it. Way to find the symbolism in it.
Mm-hmm.
My eyes could not roll harder when this happened. I was talking to my wife while I was watching it, and I was talking about like the shirtlessness and in the scenes like that, and I was like, I don't know why. I don't know why, but I also feel like it's conflicting because this movie seems to have some kind of like Christian undertone that I can't quite name, and I don't really understand why I feel like that. And then the heaven scene happened, and I was like, there it is.
I mean,
we're gonna concrete
we see it early on. Actually, they go to church, the whole family. To me, it was part of it where everything the father does is not really in line with Christian virtues and taking care of the family and stuff like that, but they pretend to be that. So there was this undertone of irony relating to the whole Christianity side of things.
But yes, I just found it mad cheesy. I don't know. I was like, you could have had another brother instead of this. But I don't know. I just didn't like it. It didn't resonate with me. I think that shit's cheesy. But I like your look at it, honestly. That's not a bad way to look at it.
Yeah. I didn't completely love this movie as much as many other people did, but I enjoyed it quite a lot, and I think there's some great filmmaking in there.
I also really hated the music.
Yeah, the music isn't too great. From one movie with buff men showing off to a mediocre soundtrack, it's time to move on to another movie, this time with buff women showing off to a great soundtrack in Love Lies Bleeding.
Love Lies Bleeding is the second film by writer-director Rose Glass. Set as a period piece at the end of the 80s, it follows Katie O'Brien as the traveling bodybuilder Jackie and Kristen Stewart as the gym manager Lou, falling in love, getting involved in a murder of a wife-beater, and all the craziness that follows due to the cleanup attempts and falling out of Lou and her mafia father, played by Ed Harris. It includes many elements from the erotic thriller, body horror, and fantasy aspects and more.
this is interestingly enough not the first time we mentioned this movie on the podcast. In the episode where we talked about the first little upcoming movies from this year's festival season, we mentioned Love Lies Bleeding as premiering at Sundance and also playing at the Berlinale. So we're catching up on our promises.
Yeah.
How did you experience this, Devyn?
This wasn't bad. I definitely enjoyed it more than Ironclaw, I'll tell you that. my first takeaway of this movie was like, okay, I have the obvious understanding why we picked these two films is, muscular, sad stories or violent stories in some way or whatever, that's what we're going with here. And then we open with a real awkward masturbation scene. And I was like, that's what these movies have in common. Awkward masturbation scenes. That was my first takeaway, and I thought it was really funny. No, I did enjoy this a lot. I had some flaws with it, but there's some really fun stuff going on in this movie with the relationship that Lou and Jackie have is really interesting, very toxic.
Oh, yeah.
I always admire a drug story and an addiction story and drug addict stories or anything like that, drug love, all that kind of stuff. And this is a very unique kind of story. It's not obviously the main focus or anything, but their relationship is very, about addiction and about chasing this, not only the drug that she's using that Lou is providing, but the addiction and the drug of bodybuilding and being the best and being looked at are all things that she wants. So I thought that was really unique and cool to have that aspect of it. I also really fucking liked how gross Ed Harris looked. That was amazing. It was really, really, really awesome to see just disgusting Ed Harris. Also, Dave Franco wins the award for most rat tails in a film. That was funny.
Yeah.
Yeah, I enjoyed this. This was good.
I want to instantly add on to the addiction theme. There's this side story with Lou that I enjoyed where she, in the very beginning, is a heavy smoker and she constantly listens to anti-smoking PSAs trying to quit. And she does eventually, over the course of the movie, quit, but only once she supplements that addiction with being kind of addicted to Jackie as a character, to the love of Jackie. That's the moment she gives up smoking. So that's also an interesting side to that story.
She actually gives up all her vices.
Yeah, true. Not only smoking.
Yeah, she was all her vices in that one moment. Yeah, she drops everything.
I love this a lot. I have not seen the other Rose Glass movie, but that might be my plan for today, to check out Saint Maud. I've heard a lot of great things about it, and it seemed up my alley. I don't know why I've never gotten to it. This was awesome. It's almost this French extremity side to it. To me, it felt a bit like as if the Coen brothers and, Julia Ducournau or someone got merged into one person and they made a movie. From the beginning, I was kind of put off. The 80s is really not my decade when it comes to aesthetics, the cultural impact it had, the pop culture it brought forth.
You're not an 80s music guy?
No. Does that surprise you?
I honestly would love to know what the 80s in Austria was like, but I assume you mean the 80s in American films.
Yeah, general, more international pop culture. Yeah, mostly American pop culture kind of aligns and tries to mimic whatever is happening in America. Yeah, but to me, the general takeaway or the main takeaway of this movie was that I think it's awesome how it's set in the 80s, in this super masculine time of the history. You have America that just went through 8 years of Reagan. You have Tom Cruise, who just flew a fighter jet over the big screen. Schwarzenegger, Van Damme, and Stallone killed every communist imaginable it's very much we are winning, we are the best, we are the greatest mentality. And of all places, within that time, this movie takes place within a gym and a gun range. Like, you couldn't go any more masculine than that, time-wise, location-wise, whatever. Kind of, even if it's just a side story, the mafia side of the story, is also a very masculine idea. And you have that all play out from the perspective of women that really helped it break up this rigid system and made me more open to whatever was going on. That was like my first takeaway of that. But yeah, I think this general influence of masculinity and toxic masculinity, even on people that aren't men themselves, was my main lens to look at this movie, I guess.
It's kind of the permeation of the masculinity is like everywhere in this. In like, is that what you mean? What do you mean?
Yeah, that the masculinity and the male gaze was just so dominant and everywhere around them that there was just no way to avoid those traits, and that they even swapped over on, women in this case. And we see the story play out of women that were kind of turned into monsters by toxic masculinity, in my opinion. At least that's like how I look at this film.
I don't know. You have two women in this film. One is, I would say, very lesbian. She gets, mad at the prospects of the other lady sleeping with a man at one point. I mean, I guess it's really specifically the man.
Yeah,
She's
the specific man. Also, yeah.
Yeah. But the other one is bi. They bring that up for a minute or whatever.
Mm-hmm.
It's hard for me to apply that idea. I don't know where male gaze collides or coincides with gay women gaze. Do you know what I mean?
Okay. Yeah.
I don't know if it's that the male gaze permeated and like became part of even their culture, and that is what you know what you mean, or if that's just like how some gay women's, their gaze is aimed toward.
Yeah, it might just be, obviously, I'm a straight dude from Central Europe. It might just be my very limited worldview that results in that kind of reading of the movie.
Yeah.
I'm very aware of that, and I'm not saying that this is what Rose Glass went out of her way to achieve.
Yeah.
But to me, it worked really in that sort of way.
No, that makes total sense. It makes total sense.
I can give more examples of how I think that plays out. There's a fantastic scene in the middle of the film, pretty much exactly the halfway point, where Jackie practices poses in front of the mirror Lou's place, whilst Lou is cleaning up the murder of the wife beater. It starts off super unhinged with like a syringe between the toes, so you're already super on edge. The soundtrack that is playing, I could only describe as like the composer channeling Trent Reznor and Atticus Ross at their most disturbed and most distorted. The TV blasts through the room, the reports and like the cheers and celebration of people in Berlin as the Berlin Wall crashes down. And Jackie flexes in front of the mirror as if the cheers were meant for her. I think like the movie and Jackie in particular try to almost own the 80s and make it their own. She can be the strongest. She can rise above masculinity. She can destroy man, and all the cheers of humanity celebrating the big historical achievements of the time actually cheer to her. That's how I really read the movie. And what I absolutely loved about it.
I definitely wish that they did a little more backstorying on her decisions to become a bodybuilder.
Mm-hmm.
We're kind of given like little glimpses of things. She mentions like, I prefer to understand my own strength or whatever.
Yeah.
Kind of there's something there. You can sense there's something deeper there. That maybe there's something trauma involved that made her want to be stronger, or maybe, I don't know, maybe it isn't. Maybe it's she just wants to challenge herself. I just wish there was a little bit more.
It gives you a few breadcrumbs. We have that dialogue scene when she calls her little brother, apparently, and the mother interrupts and is like super angry with her and is like, don't call here ever again.
Yeah.
And then later on, you have the dialogue with Jackie and Lou, where Jackie says, I killed people, I don't know what's wrong with me. And to me, that could kind of explain, because obviously we saw her kill 2 people, but like she didn't need to push herself up to really do those 2 murders. It might not have been her first. And with the way the mother reacted and didn't want to ever hear again from her, I took that away as she might have killed before, and whatever happened in the family might be like that. That arguing point might be due to that, a result of that.
That's interesting. Is she's probably had a snapping moment before this.
Mm-hmm. It obviously plays a bit with gender roles. If we want to look at it through that lens, it might have been the one person in her family we never hear about is her father. She might have killed her father. She got super angry at the husband, at the wife beater. That might have been the reason, the instance why she killed her father. There's like little breadcrumbs that you could spin your own story from.
They actually did an interview with the 2 actors and the director, literally on the female gaze versus the male gaze of this movie.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah.
I tried to look into a few interviews. I missed that one, apparently.
They're kind of just like, this shit is sexy. Even, to whoever you are, they're like, we found this stuff sexy. And kind of like Kristen Stewart said, she would say it's almost impossible to avoid the male gaze to a degree even.
Mm-hmm.
And then Katie O'Brien said, looking the way I look, if I got cast in a gay movie and it wanted to be, truthful to like the gay appeal, she's like, I would have just worn cargo shorts and pulled a strap on out. And she's like, but that's boring and that wouldn't have been as fun. And then Kristen Stewart was like, no, that sounds pretty fun. And they were like, all 3 of them were like, no, yeah, that's totally really fun, but that's not, the same thing on screen that we're trying to make. I think when you're in that position, any more fluid sexuality position than just heteronormative, the gaze isn't just male or female sometimes. I think it is a very different thing. I think it's a blended thing. It's a very unique thing.
Mm-hmm.
And it's hard. Like, I think that might be what Kristen Stewart says when she says it's impossible to avoid it because it's part of it already. It's part of sexuality in general.
In a way, you could also see it as kind of fitting into the way I read the movie, where the male gaze in this is just so dominant, so all around them, that there is no way to escape for them as even not males.
Absolutely. There's studies and stuff that talk about like if the male gaze continues enough, how long until that like before that start to be the normal for even women to look upon things with the male gaze.
Yeah, that's exactly it. There's even, and I'm just gonna paraphrase that because it's been a while since I heard that interview, but I remember an interview with the Austrian director Elisabeth Scharong. Love her work, and she said in an interview at one point, I had to make this realization that the movies I grew up in, the culture I grew up in is just so dominated by male gaze that my first movies ended up being male gaze driven movies. That was something she had to overcome. She's very active in like feminist culture now, but that's exactly what I'm trying to get at here. And like this time and this place on Earth is just so dominantly masculine that there was no way for them to fully escape.
I definitely see where you're more coming from on it a little bit.
Mm-hmm.
I do again want to bring up how disgusting Ed Harris looks in this film. I almost said Ed Helms. My God, that hair is just so
Greasy, slimy,
it's
disgusting,
just
revolting. What do you wanna?
it's so over the top. It feels like a comic book character. You know, you see him really early on in the film, and he's just greasy, nasty creep dude. If I saw him, right, I'd be like, that guy runs a motel and has holes in the eyes of the paintings in the rooms. Do you know what I mean? Like, he's a creepy looking dude. I thought it was really funny that later, not only did they make him a bug guy, that he's also really into bugs. I was like, oh, because he wasn't already creepy enough and like smarmy enough, they had to make him a bug dude. That's a disservice to bugs, if you ask me.
Yeah.
But later he eats a beetle. Just solid eats a beetle. Like, oh, okay, so he's also fucking the Oogie Boogie from the Nightmare Before Christmas too. He's Beetlejuice, I guess. I don't know why he's eating bugs. They just went all out on making him absolutely just a foul human being in every direction they could.
Oh yeah, for sure.
It's honestly almost over the fucking top. It's almost a little too much, but I kind of dug it. I was kind of okay with that. Because you don't ever see Ed Harris like that.
This movie, in many ways, to me, is always like notching closer and closer to being too ridiculous, and then barely just scraping by and not going too far for my sensibilities. So like the, I guess, drug-induced sequence later on where she pukes on stage, like that's really out there imagery-wise, and how far you're gonna push this psychological trauma meets hallucinating due to, I guess, sleep deprivation, because she's just training for the last 24 hours or something. It all really gets close to the edge, but it still managed to pull it off, in my opinion.
Some of the hallucination scenes were really, really cool. Some of them I was like, yeah, whatever. But I do like the very initial moment she starts tripping, and like that first person that talks to her has like the eyes are all black, and it's only for like a split second, and like it's just subtly off. That was pretty good. Like,
that was great. Yeah,
this is interpretive moments in film and artistic moments in film and stuff, but I think you probably understands where I'm coming from when I say that sometimes it's really hard not to judge how a film is portraying getting high. Sometimes you see and you're like, that's not what it's like. But I did like that very initial moment. And they do it again too. She like looks out to the ladies on the side, and she thinks they're all laughing at her, and they all kind of have like their faces are just a little off and stuff. I did like that. Throwing up a whole body. I think that was that same scene, right? Or is that later?
Yeah, it's like the result of that scene where she goes out on stage again and
throws up Kristen Stewart for some reason. Yeah, that was a little much. I was like, calm down.
Like, it's almost wrong to say it's getting close to it and not pushing too far. I think it works because it's purposefully in that scene pushing it too far. Like, you looking at this, I didn't think, oh, this is supposed to be an accurate representation. It was clearly so over the top that it more felt like a fantasy way to represent her inner trauma, you know, and not as an accurate, this is what she's actually seeing because she's tripping scene, you know. Yeah. There's some great little moments that have way more depth to them. On one hand, you have that visual that I love of how, I think it's meant to represent how Lou looks at her father. You have those flashing little insert shots of him just standing there in red light, menacingly. It's like, to me, her disdain for her father. And later on in the movie, there's that sequence where they are visiting Beth in the hospital. Yeah, Lou's sister that recovered slowly, and she just learned that her husband died. And Lou and the father leave the room for a second. She gets something to drink from the vending machine. And in that scene, their dialogue is lit by the red light of the vending machine that perfectly reflected the insert shots red light of Ed Harris. And, it's, I think, like the only one-on-one conversation we get between those two characters, and having it drenched in the red light, in the menacing color that it's associated with like this hatred between those two, that was really great.
Mm-hmm. That entire, the murdering of Dave Franco's character. I don't remember what his character's name was.
Yeah, me neither.
What a visceral murder scene.
Yeah. Yeah, it's intense.
I don't think I've seen somebody in film get curb stomped since American History X.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. JJ.
And that was
JJ was his name.
JJ, yeah. He played that really well. I really liked him in this, honestly.
Yeah, he did.
He played that role really well.
There's some fun banter between the cast. I think it was like a video I saw of the Sundance premiere, and where they had like a Q&A afterwards with the almost entire cast and crew on stage. And Dave Franco went into a bit of like the preparation he did for his character and the psychological, whatever he just like did to prepare to playing this. And then Kirsten Stewart interrupts him like, "Oh, shut the fuck up."
That's hella funny.
Not any serious manner. Everyone just laughed about it. But I think like just having this idea of the wife beater is getting into how he like portrayed his characters was really not the right tonality to talk about after this movie.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. That was great. There is a moment also happening in the hospital setting when Lou and her father visit Beth for the first time, and she is still in a coma. Lou says that they have to do something about it, and the father says, like, what, kill her? And we can't do that. She won't like it. I'd like to respect her wishes. And that's the one sentence I wrote down from that, because on the surface level, I'd like to respect her wishes is very much a feminist thing to think, to say. But within this context, it's so incredibly ironic, because it's in the context of, I'd like to respect her wishes, let's not punish her husband. It's in the context of saving another man that he respects the wish of a woman. And that's the only time we see him make a sentence like that. So that was really interesting to me.
I would have thought of that at all. That's really good.
And it's also the moment we see like the monster awakening. So like there's the sequence followed right after with like short cuts of veins pumping and muscles flexing before Jackie gets up and then drives to JJ. So I think there's some connection between that and respecting her wishes and the monster really waking up.
Yeah, they really did number on her too. That makeup later, you see the cistern wake up and it's just swollen like so far off her face.
A big thing to me with this movie is also just the general tension and feeling of pacing that the movie manages to pull off. Up until, I think, 20 minutes before the ending of the film, like 1 hour 20 in or something like that, the pacing is incredible to me. The 1 hour 20 point is around when she pukes on stage. That's to me like the pinnacle of heightened tension. Oh my God, I have no idea what my heart rate was at. I don't even want to know. My doctor should never know.
Damn.
Yeah, it was really, really intense to me. Like the way, just through editing, through the sound design. Oh my God, the sound design. Like just that sequence I mentioned like 2 minutes ago of the quick edits between veins flexing, muscles flexing. The sounds they use there, I don't even know how to describe them, but that soundscape did so much with me. I flinched in my seat. Disgusting. Love it, but disgusting.
Just killing your heart rate.
Everything from the soundtrack, the editing, the way things are shot super close up, just the general lighting scheme of those scenes, it all perfectly worked together to just get me more and more pumped throughout the thing. And yeah, at that point when she like pukes on stage, that's kind of also why it helped me to accept the extremity of that moment, just because it built up for basically a whole hour to this point, because it got more intense, the drug abuse got worse, the general violence got worse, the everything just built up to this moment. So it was this great, almost relief when she like got it out of her system in that moment. In that moment, I was like, okay, this is gonna be my favorite movie of the year. I don't know. This is incredible. I was fully convinced of my reading. I saw more and more of the toxic masculinity being mirrored within them. And then it kind of not lost me, but it lost a bit of its charm to me in the last 20 minutes of the movie.
Like right when Kristen Stewart goes back to the other girl?
Yeah, that's around there.
Yeah.
The dynamic between Kristen Stewart and the other girl is nowhere near as interesting as the dynamic between her and Jackie.
Beth is that girl's name, yeah.
Beth is the sister, isn't she?
Oh, no, you were right. Oh my God. No, you were correct.
Daisy.
I even looked it up. Daisy.
Daisy.
Thank you.
Yeah. The relation between her and Daisy is nowhere near as interesting. The general mafia plotting side of the story is also nowhere near as interesting to me. There are moments that I like a lot still in those last 20 minutes. The dialogue between Lou and Beth is great when she like tries to come back and finish off the dad, I guess. And she finds Beth and has that argument about, I am really sorry about what happened to your husband, but I'm also not. I think that nuance between their feelings to each other in that moment were great. And that's a great payoff that kind of needed to happen for all of the character arcs to be complete. But yeah, to get to that point, like the 10-15 minutes between the puking on stage and the face-off between Lou and Beth and everything that follows later, that was kind of the weak point to me of the movie.
No, I totally agree. It gets slow. It's clearly trying to... It feels like the ending is trying to rush to its conclusion. It kind of drops its sense of meanings at that point.
Mm-hmm.
For just like, I don't know, almost shock in certain moments. Especially like, when you see Daisy die.
Yeah. Yeah, there's great moments with that too. The very moment Daisy dies, I love the acting of Kristen Stewart. Her reaction of she's not like really saying anything. She's just stumbling over her words and just making noises basically, and then finishes off her reaction by saying, huh?
What?
Yeah, that was so good. That felt so real and was so funny at the same time. My God, what a great relief moment. So the acting of that was just stellar. But also in the very end, it kind of comes back because it turns out Daisy survived that shot and is still breathing. Lou gets up whilst Jackie is sleeping. Jackie doesn't realize any of this, but Lou gets up after parking the car and kind of finishes off Daisy in that moment. And to me, that was a great little character moment because it shows that a few minutes earlier, we have the last dialogue between Lou and her father. And Lou claims, I'm nothing like you. And the father just replies, oh, how much you wish that were true. And in that moment, I think it proves him right of, she has some of that in herself. She has that of her father in herself. And you could, again, read it within my lens of some of his toxic masculinity was given to her and was embedded in her character as well.
No, absolutely. I could see that, yeah. Yeah, I saw that definitely. That last one was her like becoming her dad in the end, but basically doing the same shit that she just tried to like get her dad caught up for.
Before that, there's also our second little fantasy moment we get. Jackie coming back to save Lou from her father as like a giant.
Yeah.
What did you think of that?
Really fucking random, but I really liked it. I wish there was a little more of those kind of things in this movie. I'm always for that kind of stuff. But no, I like that. I like that scene a lot. I thought that was fun.
Yeah, I loved it as well. Just like it's very obvious what it's trying to tell. You know, it's this super strong woman overcoming masculinity, really, quite literally. And yeah, but it just looked so cool. It was a very fun way to portray that. Yeah. I guess one final little thing that I admired about it and that kind of nudged me towards this reading was all the big slogans and I guess mantras hung up in the gym. I wrote some of them down. Only losers quit. Pain is a weakness leaving the body. The body achieves what the mind believes. Destiny is a decision. Like those are all straight up, I don't know, Andrew Tate tweets, you know?
Those are literally all things that I've heard ever since I was a kid.
Yeah, it's very much real advice.
Yeah. Pain is a weakness leaving the body. I've heard a lot of tattoo artists say that.
Yeah, it makes sense that the tattoo community would kind of stick to that with the... Man, you could make a movie about just addiction to pain with tattoo addicted people. Like that could be a great topic, actually.
Yeah.
Yeah, there's overlap there for sure.
I'm pretty sure that it's already probably happened.
Maybe, yeah. If not, I want a credit. Whoever is making that movie now, thank you for my cut. There's great detail, was just my main point I wanted to get at, even within like the set design of the gym itself. Even like it's not a over the top set. It's not drawing attention to itself, but even within what is hung on the walls, there's clear thought to get to their goals. Lovely film. I wish the ending was a bit tighter, I guess, or a bit different. I don't know what exactly they would have needed to change. But yeah, this, for the most part, I absolutely adored what this movie was doing to me and to like the general themes and the ideas it had. Great film. Already a big fan of Rose Glass. I need to get the Scent mod, and let's hope she's doing way more in the future.
Hell yeah, I'm into it. Really good film. Not obviously a big favorite for me, but I did really enjoy it. I was so happy I saw it.
For the next appointment, we are going to dive into the world of tennis, with your prescription including Challengers, the new film by renowned Italian writer-director Luca Guadagnino. Starring Josh O'Connor, Mike Feist, and Zendaya, Challengers takes a match in a Challengers tournament as a framing device to tell a very tense relationship drama between two childhood friends and their shared love for both tennis and Tashi. It features incredible cinematography, just like a Trent Reznor Atticus Ross soundtrack that pushes you through the story.
The second prescription is another Hitchcock classic. Strangers on a Train from 1951 follows two strangers, a psychopath and a tennis pro, who meet on a train and then discuss and forge the perfect plan to get away with murder. Shot in black and white, the classic crime thriller is considered one of the greats of the genre and stars Fairleigh Granger, Ruth Roman, and Robert Walker.
If you don't want to get spoiled for either of these films, make sure to check them out by the next episode 2 weeks from now.
I'm Devyn.
I'm George, and this was your 14th appointment of your Medicinema.